Episode 15 with Rosemary Siemens. I really enjoyed this interview. I wanted to make sure I had a chance to interview Rosemary when I was in Vancouver, and she happened to be in town. We made it work. She's fascinating. She's a fantastic violinist. She's got her social game on point, and I really enjoyed finding about her career and sitting down and chatting. So sit back and relax, and let's get this thing rolling. Okay, we're rolling, and we're in Burnaby.
Yes, we are.
This place is awesome.
Thank you.
And we're here with Rosemary. It's really neat to meet you. And
to meet you.
I have to admit, you're one of the coolest people on my Instagram page. And so when I knew I was coming out here, I said, I got to reach out. And I thought, I'd love to interview you. And
awesome.
You have a really interesting life, and you're a great player. And,
thank you.
And I enjoy you've got the Instagram and Facebook thing down.
Well, we try. It's a full-time job.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Holy smokes. I know. I'm thinking I can't keep up with all that, but I tried.
You get home from a gala at 11 p.m. and then you're supposed to post yet, but it takes that dedication.
Yeah. So you're a Manitoba girl, right? Were you born?
Plum Coulee, Manitoba. Yes. Very small town in southern Manitoba.
And your parents are farmers?
Yes. My dad is 80 years old, still farms full time, and my mom was a music teacher.
Oh, was she?
Yep.
So what's her main instrument?
Piano, and she conducted a lot of choirs, but she heard me sing at like 1 and 2, and she knew that she thought I had perfect pitch at that point. And so at 3 years old, I remember my first memory was sitting in the kitchen, and she says, "Do you want to take violin lessons?" And I was like, "Sure." And she taught me piano from 3 as well, and she found a violin teacher for me at 3 years old, and that's where it all began. And she drove me from that farm to Winnipeg, which was an hour and a half each way, and we were sometimes going 4 to 5 times a week, from choir to piano to violin.
Jeez, that's dedication.
Her investment in time that allowed me to do what I love. Totally.
Yeah. Well, you can see that now, that they really invested in what you do. They're wrapped around it like crazy. And
totally.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So 3 years old, violin. Did you start off? I started when I was 4. I started with the Suzuki method.
I didn't actually do Suzuki, which we used some of those songs, but it wasn't Suzuki method. And I started, my teacher, she had never taken someone so young. So it took some convincing, actually.
Yeah.
And then my mom would teach me a lot by ear as well when I was home. So we would do a lot of hymns and stuff like that. And Sunday afternoons, I come from a big Mennonite family, and we would get together at my grandma's and sing hymns with like 60 people. So you'd hear the 4-part harmony. And so I'd start improvising on those hymns. And that's really where my love of improvising came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So learning at that age, do you have your first violin?
I do.
Yes, I have mine too. It's a little tiny thing. I love every once in a while. Where is it? I can't even remember where it is. I find it. It's like, I look at it. It's so small. I remember my first Suzuki little concert. I can't even remember. I don't think I even was starting in that course for more than a week or two. And my teacher said, well, we're having this little concert, and it was just not far away. And I went and played. And of course, you start with that, with a violin that has no strings, or it's just like a kind of like a fake violin.
Oh,
right?
I've seen those. Yeah.
And that's the only thing I remember about the Suzuki course is standing on stage with maybe 30 other kids that are playing the violin. I'm the only one that has no strings.
That's hilarious.
But I played that thing like, I was making music, and I was the hit of the concert because everyone was pointing, look at that guy.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I can take myself there instantly.
Huh.
It's that memory that I don't remember anything else about taking that Suzuki course. I didn't take it very long. I had a teacher after that and went for violin lessons, and I started. I was more, for me, I did a little bit of classical, but I pretty well ran it right into being a country fiddle player.
Yeah.
And then I started playing with my brother and sister when we had a little trio when we were young. But
that's awesome.
Learning at that age, I think I look back at it now. It's important. I think it's as soon as you get old enough to be able to do something, I think it's good to get it in your hands.
Absolutely. So it just becomes a part of you.
Yeah. Because if you wait, people still are great players when they've started learning when they're 15, 16 or whatever. But there's something a little different that when you've learned right from that early, and it just becomes, like you said, it becomes a part of you.
Totally.
So did you, I know for me, I entered fiddle contests and that type. Did you play much country, or you were into more classical?
I did classical and gospel.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of as I said, a lot of hymns and stuff like that. I wish I would have had the country training. That would have been nice, because now I'm doing country music.
Yeah.
But no, it was basically classical, and then playing a lot of hymns and stuff like that, gospel music.
Yeah. And did you have a chance to play did you have any bands or any groups that you would play with, or is it?
No, I was not allowed to listen to any pop music growing up. Couldn't get my ears pierced and couldn't listen to pop music.
There you go. That's probably a good thing.
Or couldn't go to movies either. But no, my mom played piano, so we'd play together all the time. Yeah. And then we'd have like little duos and trios with my friends and stuff like that. But nothing until I went to college, where I started playing pop music and stuff like that. Totally. Yeah. In bands. Yeah.
So did you have the same teacher for a long time?
From 3 to 13, and then I moved to a different teacher. She told me, okay, now you're more advanced, so you have to go to this other teacher. And then I had a teacher from 13 till I went to college. And then I did my undergrad at UBC in Vancouver and a master's at the University of Miami in Florida. Wow. Then another degree after that at the Vancouver Academy, an artist diploma. So I could have been a doctor. Yes. So much schooling.
No kidding. A doctor of violin.
Yes.
So when you were younger, did you feel that you wanted to practice, or something that you did all the time? I know when I was young, my mom really kind of got me going on that too. And I loved it, but I was always, I wouldn't say forced, but there was always like, okay, you got to practice. It's, this time, and you had to, she sat and she wasn't playing anything at that time, but she would sit and go through every single lesson with me. And at that age, I think you like it, but you're still young, and there's still other things, I want to go outside and play.
Absolutely. There was a lot of screaming matches at home, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a lot of forced. And at the time, you would just want to be hanging out with your friends. And imagine you had to practice piano, I had to practice violin, I had to practice singing, I had to go to choir, it was like all consuming. And I was very social. Yeah. So that was, there was definitely crying moments. But
I had a few of those too.
There was one point I wanted to quit. I remember I always loved it though. I loved performing and I loved competitions. But there was one point, and I remember my teacher sat down with me and she says, "You'll regret it." And I mean, that's what everyone says today. If they quit an instrument, they say, "I wish I would have kept going," right? So I'm just thankful I had people in my life that made me kind of keep going, because if you don't get through that patch, most people quit,
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, when you get older, you look back at that and you're like, oh, I'm real glad I had parents that
totally
made me sit there and do that, and understood you had the skill to do it, and there's something there. I think you probably see it too. You see friends that have kids that play, and you can tell right away whether there's something there or not.
You always know. Yeah. It's an innate
Did you teach? Have you taught at all?
I have taught. Yeah. The last few years I've gotten too busy with touring, but I've taught piano and violin both. Yeah. Yeah. And you always see when there's something special there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can tell when there's something not special.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Those are the worst. I didn't do much teaching at all, because probably because I didn't have any students that I thought were, warranted a whole lot. So next week would come by, and it's like, okay, you haven't learned anything since last week. And it's like, oh, this is a waste of my time.
I know.
And you feel it's a waste of the parents' time too. They're spending money, and they're spending time. And if it's not there, I'm always pretty honest about that stuff. I would say, I don't think this is going to be the right thing.
Yeah.
And you see parents push kids a lot, and that's in everything. There could be gymnastics or sports, or you spend all this money, and then if there's not going to be any interest at all, you wonder why.
Absolutely.
Why you do it. But sometimes it's more for the parents than it is for the kids.
Living through their children.
Totally. So you mentioned you had, would you say you had a kind of a strict upbringing?
Very strict, yeah. Very strict. In terms of, it was strict.
Yeah.
But yet free. I don't know. Weird kind of combo. But it was, I couldn't really go anywhere because I was on the farm. It's not like I could be in town and go be rebellious. That wasn't like that. So it was like, a lot of great musicians come from Manitoba. I think it's because it's freezing cold. So in the winter, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And living on a farm, you're going to practice, you're going to play, and It's a great way to grow up, I think.
I think so too. I grew up on a farm.
You did? Yeah.
Not a big farm, but we did a little. My parents bought a property in the country. I think probably just before I was born. They were just fixing it up to resell, and they ended up loving it and moved there. And the same thing I was talking about today on another podcast. There was nothing else to do. I mean, you go outside and play, but you weren't distracted by all the kids down the street playing soccer and all that. And there was just times, I think when I got to my early teens, that's when I really felt like I got focused on what I really liked, and I had interest in recording, and so you spent hours, you know. And
absolutely.
When did you feel do you remember a time where it went from being a chore to practice to really wanting to do it all the time?
Maybe in college.
Yeah.
Like I sang in a choir, Mennonite children's choir, from like maybe grade 7 till I graduated, and that I did a lot of touring with them at a young age. So we went to Israel, we went to Asia, to Germany, all over, and that kind of, I love traveling, and that kind of got the travel bug in me.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I wanted to pursue music, and I didn't know if it was going to be piano or violin. And then my teacher just said, it's a lot easier to play violin because it's so easy to carry and all this kind of stuff. So that's when I decided to do violin, probably in grade 11 or so.
Yeah.
And then, but in college, when you can really devote, like you're there, it's in violin performance. So you're there to just practice and get better. So that's really, I think, when everything kind of switched for me.
Yeah. So you went high school to, what was the first place you went?
University of British Columbia, UBC, yeah.
And how many years was that?
4 years.
4 years. That's a lot. And then from there?
To Miami, University of Miami, 3 years for a master's.
Wow.
And then another 3 years artist diploma back in Vancouver.
That's crazy. That's a lot of school.
I know. And I actually, when I came back to Vancouver, so I studied with this world-renowned teacher in the University of Miami, Robert Rozek, and he was from Switzerland originally, and he would take me in the summers to Switzerland to study. And I told him, I says, you know what, if you love Switzerland, you'd love Vancouver because you have the mountains. It reminded me, it was a very similar look. And I said, you should come check out Vancouver. So I brought him here. And I introduced him to a bunch of people, and he actually got a job offer here. And so when I was done in Miami, I was going to actually start a doctorate with him there. But then he got a job offer from Vancouver. So he moved back here. So then I was like, okay, I'll move back to Vancouver too. And so, but where he was teaching, they just offered an artist diploma. So otherwise I would have done a doctorate.
So during that time, did you have an idea what you wanted to do when you were finished? There was an end goal, or just music was your life and you just were learning and getting better? And
yeah, I didn't really know what was going to happen. I know when I was in Miami, that's when I went home in the summertime and I saw my old piano teacher, and I said, we should get together and play sometime. And he said, yeah, sure. So we got together and we played some hymns, and I didn't know he improvised as well. And so we started improvising. We played in church. And someone said, I'd love a recording of that. And so we were like, oh, why don't we go record? So we ended up recording, is it 3 or 4 albums now we have here of hymns and Christmas music and stuff, just piano and violin. So that started kind of my improv stuff way back then. And then when I finished as I was doing my artist diploma, someone called me that had known me from undergrad and said, would you like to come play some gigs from the Canadian Tenors? And so I started touring with the Canadian Tenors, and that's when my touring really started.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. On a classical upbringing, there isn't a lot of improvisation. It's, pretty strict. And for me, it's the opposite, where, I started reading music and whatever, and then you start playing fiddle tunes and playing in a band, and there's no music. You might get a chord chart, and that's about it. So now, I know I got a call a few years ago to play a gig with Ray Price. And he always had 3 fiddle players with him, and then one was not able to make it over the border, I think.
Oh, funny.
And so yeah, it said all the music's there and you can come do it. And I just sat there going, oh gosh, I haven't looked at music for like a long time. And I just got nervous about it, and I decided not to do it. And now I'm thinking I probably wouldn't have had a problem with it because it's not difficult. It's just nice string line stuff. But it freaked me out a bit because it's like, I haven't looked at music for a long time.
It's a different way to think and play.
Yeah. But now, I think about it now. It's like, oh, I should have done that. Even if I would have messed it up, it would have been a good story.
Totally.
So what got you improvising? Was this something that you're just interested in doing, or?
That was from playing with the hymns.
Hymns, yeah.
Yeah, because they're such simple melodies. I think that's a great way to learn. Like, if people are learning to improvise now, that's a great way because they're simple. You can hear where the chord changes happen. And I was lucky because I had perfect pitch, so I could always tell. And that's, well, when I was younger, I didn't even know what perfect pitch was, but I know now. But my brother, what he would do is he would be in the other room. He'd be by the piano with his friends, and then he'd be like, I'd be in the other room and he'd be like, Rosemary, what note is this? And then I'd tell him. And so it was like this fun game, but I didn't know it was called perfect pitch at the time, right?
Yeah.
But that really helps improvising. But I know probably 1,000 hymns from memory. And so just making those more interesting is what got me improvising.
Yeah, it's a fun way to learn too. Mm-hmm. I know I was just saying to Eli, I play a little bit of saxophone. Mm-hmm. The way I taught myself, I used to, back before CDs, the record player of Boots Randolph, this country sax player, and had this yakety sax. Mm-hmm. And that's the first tune I wanted to learn how to play. It's like, well, you don't play yakety sax off the top, right? You learn something simple. But I sat there, I know, for days and days and put the needle down. And it was difficult because you just have to listen to the first couple notes, like, okay, start again, and learn it, and it's like, oh God, it took forever. Mm-hmm. And but it really helped my improvisation chops, because that's constant ear training, and
that's how most people learn that. I know, totally.
Yeah,
it's a great way to learn.
So you finish up with your degree here in Vancouver.
Yep.
And what did you decide to do at that point? Were you unsure?
You mean when I was done all my schooling?
Yes.
Okay, so that's I was like touring full time with Canadian tenors.
Yeah.
And then that was the first version of the Canadian tenors. And then the group that I was with, they changed their name to Destino. And so we just started touring full time through the US, through Canada. And so that was my main touring gig. And so
did you like that?
I love that. Yeah. That was like the group changed over the years. Started with 4 tenors, then 3 tenors, then 2 tenors.
The solo tenor.
Well, it was funny because my pianist and I, Roy, we have a duo, Roy and Rosemary. We were like, it started like 4, 3, 2, and then Roy and I started our own duo, and so now we're like tenor free. So there you go.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. You should call it that.
I know. So so that was where most of my touring experience came from. And then with Roy and Rosemary, now I do a lot of touring, and then I have a solo gig I do now.
So the gig with Roy, I've seen videos and stuff of that online. It looks really great.
Thank you.
So how did that connection get put together?
That was literally from doing this tenor show, and they'd always give us a few solos in the show.
So he was part of the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was the piano player.
Yeah.
The last version of Destino was Joey Niceforo, who's an amazing tenor from Toronto. Mm-hmm. He just did a solo album in Abbey Road Studios in England. And Terrence Reddick, who's on Broadway, he was on Broadway in New York, and myself and Roy. So we toured a lot together. And so we had a lot of solos in that show, and then we just thought we should do our own album, and then that kind of took off, and then we started doing our own show.
Yeah, it's a great combination. It's both great super players. And so what was it like putting that show together? Was it a difficult thing, or does it kind of come easy?
Well, instrumental music, I was like, how can we make this show super interesting without singing a lot? We sing a little in the show.
Yeah.
And so we went to a show producer in Nashville called Tom Jackson, and he is like a guru for this kind of stuff. And so he's all about creating moments in the show. Yeah. And so we went to him for like 3 days, played through all our rep, and then told him our stories and told him everything. And then basically he helped us put a show together and when you create the right moments in the show, exactly, here you're going to get someone crying, here you're going to get someone laughing, here you're going to get a standing ovation, And so once he worked with us, then we had a solid, amazing show. And so we've toured, just this last year, we probably had about 50 dates through the US. And so we're really busy. And, the song that we both that our duo I would say it's kind of started from doing this song with Destino. It was Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. We did it at all our shows, and we ended up doing a music video for that. And when Leonard Cohen passed away, our video actually went viral, and it has just almost 18 million views now. So, wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And Tom, he's great.
He's amazing.
Yeah. Smart move to do that.
Yeah. And I just probably get into that later, but I have a country group now, and I brought my songs for that to him as well, because he's just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard when you're putting a show together, because you sing it from your end, right? Mm-hmm. And when you see it from the opposite side, it's always a completely different thing. That's always encourage everybody, videotape your shows
Absolutely.
constantly. It's because you'd be amazed what's happening. I do it all the time at our theater. I'm taping every single show, and I just go back and look, and it's like, I did that. Oh gosh. And then you just little tiny things even, and you think it's working, but
absolutely. And people, they spend so much time on the music, but they don't think about the stuff in between, the talking and stuff. And that's what captures people.
Yeah.
It's the storytelling.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say audiences are dumb. I'm not going to say that.
That's what Tom Jackson says.
Okay. Okay, audiences are dumb. I just said it. But it's true. They don't. I've seen it over and over again, especially having the venue, our theater, where you've seen some shows come in and you see some of your musicianship sometimes. And I sit back and go, oh my God, these people are going to freak out. And we've had a couple times. We had this one drummer in the show, and he was filling in. He's from Detroit. And it was for a kind of old rock and roll show. Mm-hmm. And this guy just does the show. There's no really set list. It's just like we're playing Rock Around the Clock. We're playing an Elvis song. We're playing, the standards that you think everyone should be able to jump in and know.
Right.
He didn't know these songs. And lots of times he didn't know if we were in 3/4 or 6/8.
Oh, no.
He was playing straight 4/4. He had no idea. And he looked so intense when he was doing it, because he was sweating and just like he looked like a deer in the headlights look, right? And people came off during intermission. It came up to me, and I'm thinking, oh, here it comes. I could see a few people come up, and the first guy was like, yeah, that drummer. I'm thinking, oh, here it comes. He's fantastic.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, really? And he was. I think he probably was an okay drummer doing what he knows what to do. But he had no idea.
Oh, my word.
But it was his body language. It was the way he played. It's the way he presented himself that people...
Charismatic.
They don't know. They were looking at him and said, wow, look at that guy. He looks like he's having a great time. Right. He's got so much energy. Right. Mind you, he was just crapping his pants.
Oh, my word. That is so funny.
But it's true. And I've seen it over and over again now where... Yeah, you can spend forever getting every single note perfect and playing super, super fancy or over-the-top stuff. Mm-hmm. And unless your audience is super sophisticated, they don't get it half the time. But they like the story that goes into the song, or they like, whatever way you can set it up, or like you said, as it gets to a point where you can hit them something fast and then bring it down and something very emotional. And I think emotion... in playing is way more important than playing itself.
Absolutely. And like Roy and I do a really cool thing in our show where we actually write a song for the audience. And so let's say we're in some city and we say, okay, we're going to write a song for you. And we just say, give us words or descriptions. Could be about your town or about anything. And so we get all kinds of words, from like rainforest to waterfall to snow to blah, blah, blah. And then we'll pick about 4 words and then we'll take them on a journey. We bring them into our creative process, which you don't get to see very often. Yeah. So that's really cool. And we also take requests from the audience, which they love, because it puts us on the seat of our pants, and you never know what's going to happen, and it's really fun, but it really brings them into the show.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that now
our first album, Once Upon a Dream, came out in 2012.
So it's a few years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said about 50 dates so far this year you've been doing? Yeah. Pretty busy. I see you were you did some cruising.
We did some cruises as well. Yeah, we were the main entertainment for like a Regent cruise. We did about 7 cruises. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like that?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's this sounds bad, a little bit boring, because like you're there for a week and you play like 2 shows for 45 minutes each. So if you're there with like your family and stuff, it'd be awesome. But otherwise you're just like, okay, cruising here. And, but you get to see some beautiful places and stuff. But
yeah, I've done a bunch. The fellows I was talking to you earlier about the Overnight Night show, Frankie Valley, they were on Norwegian for a long, long time. So bunch of the guys I know, they would be on for like 6 months, a year.
My word. Oh, my word.
Oh,
I couldn't do that.
No,
not for me.
It would drive me absolutely crazy. And same thing, they would do a bit in the preview night, and then they'd have one show. And it's like...
I know. And you think it'd be awesome. It sounds glamorous, and the first couple are awesome, but then I think if you'd have to do it over and over and over, it would get tiring.
Yeah, if I was on a ship, I wanted a gig that I'm playing all the time. And they have quite a few of those entertainers. There's quite a few there's always a string quartet of some sort.
Yep.
And they always seem to be Ukrainian or Russian. Or,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know why.
And there's always girls that wear really short skirts.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like every ship you go on, it's like, did I see your sister on the last?
Yep.
But then I always find they look just completely bored to death.
Oh, never happy.
Yeah.
No.
Because they're probably playing the same.
I wouldn't either if I had to play on a string
songs.
quartet and play for 3-hour sets. See, that's like horrible too. So I think we have what we do. So.
Oh yeah, it's a great way to do it. And, it's your show. You can put together what you want to do, and
as long as like a couple a year, perfect.
Yeah.
It's still special then. Yeah,
I agree with. So now you've been branching doing your country gospel.
Yeah.
Is that the way you want to categorize it?
Inspirational country gospel album.
So what brought that about?
Funny story. So 2 years ago about now, I was at church in Vancouver, and my boyfriend at the time took me for lunch for sushi, and I had just done a video of myself playing in the Sweet By and By in my dad's wheat field, and our swather was coming behind us, and it kind of looked like it might take me down, but it didn't. But the video went viral, and so Eli, who I was out for lunch with, he says, you know what? He says, this is your fan base, like these people in Manitoba, and they're sharing this and blah blah blah. He says, and he goes, and I think you need to like sing, play, and write, and do kind of like an Alison Krauss of Canada, kind of do an album like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that sounds interesting. And a few weeks later, I got a call from a lady from my hometown in Plum Coulee, and she says, you know what, we'd like to put up a sign in your honor. And I was like, what? And I said, okay. So once she told me this, I kind of thought, I said, why don't I do an album that kind of pays tribute to the way I grew up and stuff, and like small town living and the good-hearted people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And so a year later, I had the album, and the name of the band is Rosemary and the Sweet Sound Revival. Yeah. And the album I titled Plum Coulee My Home, and we launched it in Plum Coulee on the day that they put my sign up.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Eli actually came, and they actually made him an honorary citizen.
Oh, nice.
And that was pretty cool. And so that was the start of this whole new kind of bluegrassy country album.
Yeah. So putting that together, that must have been, obviously you grew up playing hymns and all that, so you've got that background in there, but what was it like hitting into a little slightly different type of music?
Yeah, it was cool because all these new things, like from writing, I'd kind of written a little when I was younger and stuff like that, but nothing ever seriously. And so I started calling up people and say, hey, do you know some people in Nashville I could write with? So I went to Nashville. I ended up getting to meet like some of the coolest people, like from Carl Jackson. He ended up playing on the album and writing with me on it. And he's Grammy Award-winning, and he toured with Glenn Campbell for 15 years, produced his last album. Yeah. And so wrote with him. And it's a funny story. When I was at the University of Miami, there was a fiddle teacher that came in, and I was asked to pick him up from the airport. And so I go to pick this guy up, and it happened to be my birthday. And so it's this old guy with this big beard and stuff like this, and pick him up. And I didn't know that much about fiddle music at the time. And I remember saying to him, I said, oh, it's my birthday today. He's like, you picked me up on your birthday? He's like, here's $20. And I never forgot it. Mm-hmm. And then I saw him play and do this masterclass, and I was like, man, if I ever get into country music, I'd love to take some lessons from him. Yeah. So fast forward to this, and I thought, man, I wonder if I could have some lessons with him. So I found a mutual contact on Facebook and said, do you have this person's number? And he said, yeah. So I call up this fiddle player, and I said, hey, do you think I could have a lesson with you? And he says, yeah, when are you coming in? I said, I don't know if you remember me. I picked you up from the airport. You gave me $20. He says, yeah, darling, I do remember you. And I said, well, I'm coming in. I said, coming in tomorrow. And I said, could I have a lesson? He says, absolutely. He says, do you want to come straight from the airport? And I said, sure. So I go to this guy's place, and it was amazing. He lives in this kind of little kind of cabin place, and he's outside, a big beard, and he's drinking one of these bottles of Coca-Cola. And he's like, you only drink the Coke that's in the bottles. He's like, this is the best. It's from Mexico. And he's like, it's the best Coca-Cola you can ever have. And anyway, so this was the person I was taking lessons with was legendary Buddy Spiker. Yeah. And he's like one of the greatest fiddle players ever. He was one of the first people at the Opry, and like just played with, you name it, Bill Monroe, all these people. Yeah. And so he became a very good friend through this whole process, and he ended up helping me arrange and played on my album, Buddy. I think I called it Buddy and Rosemary's Fiddle Jam on there, and Carl Jackson's playing on there as well. Awesome. So it just opened these doors to these amazing kind of country legends that it was a whole new world for me. Yeah. And it just, and I think what was the coolest about this show is I had never, in classical music, you don't talk a lot. We do talk in our Roy and Rosemary show, but it's even more so now, and to be singing. And now I love storytelling, and that's become a huge part of my show. And it's become it's kind of morphed. The show has really morphed even from when I've started. It's really become an inspirational show, and which I love that aspect. And it's actually gotten me into motivational speaking and this whole other part of my life that I would have never experienced had I not started this. So it's really cool.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
And I think, that comes hand in hand because that style of music is about storytelling.
It is.
And about real people and coming from rural Manitoba. Yeah. That's, it just makes sense.
Totally. And I remember I went to a Dolly Parton show here about a year and a half ago, and it was at, I think, Rogers Arena or something like that. And I remember her songs were so short. They were literally like 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes. It was all storytelling. And there were thousands of people there, and it felt like there was 5 people there. Yeah. And I thought, this is like the greatest example of how a show should be. And so I really take inspiration from that as well, because that's what it really connects people. And I'll never forget it. It was the greatest show I've ever been to.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
So good.
Yeah, in the songs she's
amazing.
written.
Amazing.
Oh, it's unreal. I don't have people that have no idea the material she's written.
Oh, so freaking good.
Yeah, and she's just one of those things above everybody else. You never see her. She just kind of also appears. She's on tour and doesn't have to. And
totally.
I can't imagine what her checks that come in every few months.
I know.
From those.
Unreal.
It must be amazing.
Unreal.
So, how did you put together your band that you're playing with now?
Yeah, it's sometimes different people, but I ended up, when I was working on some of the songs, I had some friends back home, Grace and Orlando Succo. I ended up working on some songs with them and wrote one song with them. And so a lot of the time they're singing with me, the harmonies. Yeah. And then I met a guy here playing a church gig, Jay Leonard, and he's like the most charismatic guitar player you've ever seen in your life. And so he's my guitar player for most gigs. And then Sam Schwaquette here on bass. They're like extremely charismatic. So it's like...
Yeah, the guitar player, he's pretty amazing.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a show visually as well, because I think that's really brings people in. And so I really try and get super charismatic people. But when I play in the States, I have some people out of Nashville I bring in as well. Yeah. And sometimes we have banjo, sometimes we have mandolin. So it kind of morphs depending on what's needed.
So is your focus now a bit more with that, or you just it's a bit of everything, I guess, right?
It's a bit of everything, absolutely. I just started a gospel YouTube channel as well, but I think the Sweet Sound Revival is I'm getting a lot of gigs from that. But like this last weekend was gala season, or this last week I played like from Variety Gala to I played Ronald McDonald House to Fraser Institute, you name it. So we had so many galas this last week, and that I did Rosemary and Friends. So I brought in opera singers from Toronto. I brought in, So my life is kind of a mix of everything. And kind of when I get a call for a gig, I see what's the audience going to be like? What are they after? And then I kind of put the music that would fit best. And I love doing that. It's kind of like music curating, and because you want the right fit. Yeah. And it's nice that I can pull on different things.
So are you booking yourself, or do you have an agent?
I have a manager in Winnipeg, Dale Penner. He produced my album, my Sweet Sound Revival album. And he actually, he's an amazing manager. Amazing. So I get the gigs and send them out to him, and he does all that stuff. And then I get to do the musical part.
Awesome. That's the way to do it.
It's really nice.
Small circle.
Absolutely.
So what are your plans now kind of ahead for where you're wanting to direct? You just kind of taking things as it goes, or you have 3, 4, 5 year plans, or how do you usually work?
How do I work? Well, it's different. Right now I'm really focused on I just launched this gospel YouTube channel, which is so every 6 weeks or so I'm launching a new music video. And so that's a really awesome part, because I have a really big passion to bring back hymns into today's society, because you can't find them anymore. And I think it's like so missing. And so that's a big piece of what I'm doing. And then I am going next week to Lancaster, Pennsylvania to hopefully book a US tour for Sweet Sound Revival. And but I really want in this next year to do I want to go to Nashville and do kind of a TV special like Rosemary and Friends. Yeah. I have this when I was on my US radio tour, I met this guy. I met him on Facebook. I don't know if you've seen him, Charles Ritchie, organ player.
Oh yeah, I seen that. Yeah,
he's like unfreaking believable. And I said to him, I said, if I'm ever in the area, like
the bouncy guy.
Yeah, totally. So I said, we got to do something together. So I was in Jacksonville, and so he came. Get this, he's like, I don't know how old, 70 maybe. He came and brought his organ in a horse trailer.
Wow.
Lugged this 500-pound organ into the radio studio. And we shot like 3 videos together. And so our first one, we had over 1 million views on Facebook. And so I love connecting with him, but him and Carl Jackson. And I want to do a special Rosemary and Friends in Nashville in a barn. It doesn't have to be in Nashville, but I want a really beautiful, almost like your setting, you know? My place, I know, that's what I was thinking when I saw that. Because my whole thing is like country chic.
Yeah.
And so I want a barn, I want chandeliers, I want that. And then I want to bring in all these amazing special guests and feature people.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
In different styles, yeah. So that's my goal, do a DVD of it.
Your social media skills are really great.
Thank you.
So how did that start? What was the first thing you kind of hopped in on? Was it a Facebook thing?
Good question. Probably Facebook, yeah. And then Instagram and YouTube. And I mean, way back it was, what was it called? MySpace?
Yeah. Oh gosh. It's funny because I think my MySpace account still is out because I never deleted it. It's still
right.
there.
Mine probably too.
I don't think I even know how to log into it.
Same.
I had a friend who thought if you had enough friends on MySpace that you'd become really, his band would become really popular.
Oh, really?
So I'd be on tour with him and he just spent hours, liking people, whatever you did. I don't think he liked it. I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know how it worked, but he spent hours
That's
and hours
hilarious.
and hours and it did nothing.
Oh my gosh.
And, but he was convinced that, if you got enough people on MySpace, and then MySpace just completely died.
That's brutal. See, I sometimes wonder with that, like, is Facebook going to be obsolete in a few years? You spend so much time on these things, or Instagram or something like that. But you just got to go with what is happening now and what people are following. It really, I mean, for me, I get a lot of work from Facebook.
Yeah.
Because people see me in different venues, and they think, oh, okay, she could be fit for this. And I really try and be authentic and share stories that happen in real life, And I think that's probably, like, that's a big comment I've had from a lot of people, that it just doesn't seem fake.
Yeah. Or not. Yeah, not at all. I know you do a lot of videos, or you used to, I think, more in the past, where you just, wherever you were, you'd have your violin.
Bring my violin, yeah.
Yeah. So is that a common thing?
Yeah.
You just always have it with you?
Yeah, I have my violin everywhere, and I try and like touch people, inspire people with music around. I've had some really cool experiences from playing at the Coliseum.
Yeah.
I was there for a gig at the Vatican, and on the way to the Vatican, my parents were there, and he said, "Oh, Rosemary, I'd really like to come to go see the Coliseum." And I said, sure. I said, let's stop there on the way. So we go to the Vatican or to the Coliseum. And I asked the tour guide, I said, could I play a song at the Coliseum? And he said, let me go ask the police. And so he went, comes back and he says, they said you can't, but I'm sure if you do it when there's not too many people, it probably is fine. Yeah. I said, okay. So we're done our tour. I said, Dad, could you film me? And he said, yeah, sure. So I'm playing a song, wasn't really feeling it, didn't know what to play there. Finally, I think third song, I was like, okay, I'm going to play Holy, 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 Iconic Hymn. So my dad's filming me. I have my eyes closed. Last note, I open my eyes, and what do I see? 3 policemen looking at me. Oh, yeah. And so they're like, come with me. And I was like, oh, my word. And meanwhile, I'm actually on my way to the ambassador of Rome's house for a concert.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, I'm going to have to call him to get me out of jail or something like this.
Yeah.
And so, and my mom starts arguing with the police officer that we're not done our tour. And I'm like, Mom, keep your mouth shut. You do not want to be arguing with these people. And I was like, oh, my word. So we go to the office, and I talked to one guard, second guard, third guard. And so finally he took my phone. He deleted my videos. Went to recently deleted those, and proceeded to escort us out of the Coliseum. So yes, we did get kicked out of the Coliseum for playing a hymn. But on my way to that security office, I had sent one to Eli. So you can find that on YouTube.
Okay. You got it out right away.
I got it. So that was really, really an interesting story.
Well, it's neat because, I saw quite a few of them, and every once in a while I'd say, oh gosh, I wouldn't. There's something, my personality wouldn't do that, right? And And I look at it and go, wow, that's really great. I mean, that just wasn't something I would think of doing, right?
Well, it was so cool because I didn't realize at the time because I had my eyes closed, and I look at the video later and there's a man standing next to me and he's just crying the whole time. So you never know how you're going to touch people.
Yeah.
And there was I wanted to share one other story with you. There was this really cool, I was on tour in the US and I was in Wisconsin Dells and I was at a Cracker Barrel restaurant. And there was this man sitting by himself and he had a veteran's hat on, and I thought, he just kind of looked lonely, and I was leaving and he said, "Are you playing here anywhere?" And I said, "No, but I'm off to the next city." And I was leaving the restaurant and my dad was there with me, and I said, "This guy just looked really sad. I thought, I feel like I should play something for him." And he says, "If you feel that, go back." So I go back and I said, "Hey, are you a veteran?" He said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Would you mind if I played you something?" And he said, "No, I would love it." So there I played, just by myself, I played America the Beautiful for him. And, the kitchen staff came out and everyone came out and he was so touched. And I gave him a CD, and I actually got an email from him the next day. And I'll just read you what he said to me. He said, "Rosemary, what an honor it was for me to be recognized by you at Cracker Barrel in Wisconsin Dells. You were not aware of just how much it meant to me. The night before, I had prayed for God to take away the pain I was in, both emotionally and physically, and you were the answer to that prayer." So you never know when you do little things for people how it's going to affect them. And I think that's kind of what one of my big goals, why I do music. I kind of have this play it forward, mentality where that's the end goal. You want to touch people through music.
Yeah, and there's such a connection that way. I know at our theater, we have a loyal fan base there, and we have a lot of people who come, we see them 8 times throughout the summer or whatever. They come over and over again. And they like the fact that it's family, and they like the fact that they can speak to you, right? Not secluded somewhere.
Yep.
And we get people all the time come up, yeah, we feel closer to you than we do our own family.
No kidding.
And
wow.
Those moments, like the one you just said, and people come up and tell you those type of things, really means a lot. I mean, you could feel that, how powerful it is. And even Chilliwack the other night with this Hank Williams show we're touring with, this guy came up to me and said, "Yeah, I've never been here before to the theater." He's probably lived in Chilliwack his whole life, probably never seen anything at the theater he wanted to go to, but he wanted to see this Hank Williams thing. Probably grew up listening to Hank Williams. And then he said, "Yeah, my neighbor brought me." And I looked over, "Oh, isn't that nice?" And I didn't realize the lady next to him was a neighbor. I wasn't putting the two of them together until she looked, and she just had this big smile on her face, right? And I'm thinking, how awesome is that? He's your neighbor, lives next to this older fellow. He could probably be on his own.
Right.
And he wanted to see this Hank Williams thing, and she brought him.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, that's why we do this type of stuff, right? And that's the stuff that stays with you and
totally
and means a lot. So, I can totally relate with those things. So, you had an interesting story I was going to want to mention about losing your violin.
Oh my word, that was insane.
Where'd your violin? How'd you find your violin that you have now?
So my violin is from 1714, made in Paris. Was said to have played in King Louis XIV's orchestra.
Wow.
I named it Sparkle, and because I love sparkly things, and it was bought by a very generous patron, and it was purchased in Switzerland at a very famous violin shop. And when I was studying at the University of Miami, there was an amateur violinist and his wife who came to watch some of my concerts in Switzerland. Okay, so as I said earlier, my teacher brought us to Switzerland in the summertime, and so they were there watching some of my concerts. And after one of my shows, he came up to me and he said, "Rosemary, I want to buy a bow for investment purposes." I said, "Okay." I said, "We're in Lausanne. It's the greatest shop in the world here where I got my violin." I said, "I'll try some bows out for you." So I spent the day doing that. And at the end of the day, I said, "Peter, found the best bow for you." And he says, "You're sure, Rosemary?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "It's a gift for you." It was a $15,000 bow. Wow. And he said, "You know what? Someone helped me through medical school and I wanted to return the favor." And then he goes, "Go thank my wife. It was her idea." So I've been blessed to have an amazing instrument thanks to very generous people. And so I was playing, about 2 years ago, I was playing in Santa Barbara for the Museum of Contemporary Art. And I was leaving the gig, was late, and I had a very early flight for another gig. So I go to my hotel room to get my bags, and a friend came with me, and my friend was carrying my violin because I was carrying speakers, and come out of my room, and I said, where's my violin? And he goes, oh, I placed it outside to help you with your bags. And I was like, no. Violin was gone. I didn't know what to do. I called Eli, and because his saxophone had been stolen once, and he said, call the police. So we called the police, went door to door knocking, nothing. Went through dumpsters, went to gas stations, liquor stores, through the bushes, walked the streets, drove the streets, and no violin. And so it was 4 a.m., and I needed to get on that plane. And so I was sitting in my friend's car and with a couple people, and out of nowhere, a black SUV rolled up next to us, and guy rolls down the window. He says, hey, are you the ones looking for the violin? I said, yeah. I says, do you have it? He says, no, but I heard about it at the gas station. He says, I have musicians in my family. I can only imagine what you're going through. And so my friend just yells over the window. He says, can we say a little prayer about the violin? And he says, absolutely. So here we are, parking lot, Santa Barbara, praying with a stranger about my violin. It was like a scene from a movie.
Yeah.
And after that prayer, something amazing happened. The man, he says, you know what? I work in the prison ministries in Santa Barbara. He says, I'm going to put the word on the TV, radio, newspapers, and I'm going to personally put a $2,000 cash reward for your violin. I was like, what is happening right now?
Wow.
But that gave me enough faith to get on that airplane.
Yeah.
And so I got on, and I remember my first stop coming down. You know, you check your messages and you're like waiting, but imagine my panic at that moment, and there was no messages. And I thought, man, not only have they stolen this violin and bow, but they've stolen the beautiful story of how I got it even, you know, that generosity. And it was so disheartening. And I remember getting off the plane, and I went to the gate, and I looked down at my phone, and I was just crying. And I see a text message come in from the hotel manager, and she calls me, and she's crying. And she says, you won't believe what just happened. I said, what? She goes, a man in a black hoodie, disheveled looking, wasn't staying at the hotel, came to the front door, went to the front desk, placed my violin down, and said, I hear you've been looking for this, and walked out the front door.
Wow.
Now, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. And I can't even tell you how thankful I am to have that violin. And I think, honestly, looking back on it, I think that happened just so that I could share this story with people. And it's been such a testimony for my shows and everything, because I can go from a radio station to a TV station to a show in a bar to a show in a concert hall and share this story.
Yeah.
And it's been a beautiful thing. At the time, it was not a beautiful thing, but looking back, that's and I have a song on my album called Have a Little Faith. And so then I share that song, and I just say, you know, whatever people are going through in life, whether it's a sickness or a relationship issue, it's so important to just have faith to see things through. So
yeah, it's pretty that's remarkable.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, because you know, most people don't realize the attachment to an instrument.
Oh my gosh.
Especially a good one.
Yeah.
And because you could have something else,
mm-hmm.
and it never will be the same.
Absolutely.
I had a really nice bow. You know, probably like a $6,000-$7,000 bow that I just loved. And one day we were setting up, and I had a road case for 2 violins.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of had my violin sitting in the road case, kind of upright. And we were setting up for a show. My dad put a step ladder on top of the road case, and was walking up to adjust some stage lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Sure enough, second step in, his foot slips through. Snap goes the bow right through the bow.
No.
Yeah, completely in half.
Oh my word. No.
And I was like, and it was like, uh-oh.
Oh.
And if it wasn't that it was my dad, I would have probably just, I mean, I freaked enough, but it wasn't, it's like, what can I do? Yeah. That was a mistake. And I love that. You know, that bow was just like, oh gosh. And I've just been playing crap bowls ever since.
Oh no! Oh no!
A good friend of mine, good fiddle player, his name's Donnie Reed. He's from Sudbury. He played fiddle on all the Dwight Yoakam albums, and he's just mind-boggling great, and just this quiet, shy guy, and he stands on stage, you wouldn't even know he's there, but he plays, it just blows your mind. And the one day I was like, I got to find out what I should get for another bow. So I went and asked him, so what do you play for a bow? He said, I don't know. I just get whatever I can. This one's worth $50.
No way.
And I was like, really? Said, yeah, I don't really care. And then since then, for me, it's been like, I've been quietly searching, for a bow every once in a while, but I don't put a whole lot of effort into it. Right. I just said, all right, when this one's trashed and I've played Orange Blossom Special and run through it a million times, I'll just grab the next one and keep going. But I know when I play a good violin or a good bow, it's certainly, you can play a lot better.
Totally.
There's something.
It's especially important when you're playing classical music.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's just the sustain and the tone, like the color, and you can have so many different nuances. And it's especially important for that stuff.
Yeah.
Totally.
I have a couple of really nice violins. I had a slightly similar story. I had a friend that gave me a violin one day. He just wanted me to drop by and said, I have this violin. It used to be my grandfather's violin. He played in the Toronto Symphony, like early 1900s.
Wow.
And so, all right, check it out. You always get, I'm sure you get that too. Can you see, I got this violin up, you open it up, there's one string on it. And so I checked it out and said, it plays really, really nice. It's a good violin. I said, make sure you make sure you hang on to this one and it's good.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's yours.
Amazing.
And it's like, no. Yeah. He says, I want it to be played. And it's like, I still don't know what to say to him, but I play it all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love it. Every time I pick it up, sometime in the show, I'll think of the fact that I got this thing.
Totally.
Because,
That's so cool.
Someone just thought it should be played.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean,
they have to be played.
Yeah. If you don't, then they just sit there. I don't care who gets them. It should be played.
Yeah.
Because it's like a car. If you don't drive it, it's just going to go.
Totally.
So what's kind of, I know we talked about future and what's going on and 5-year, 10-year plans. Let me ask you first. I'm going to go back. I'm going to skip back a ways. Mm-hmm. You just had a boy.
I just had a baby. Yeah.
That was how many people were shocked that happened?
Oh my word, a lot. I kept it a secret. And between my husband and I, we had 175 shows between the two of us in 9 months, if you can imagine. Wow. And we kept it a secret for most of that. And
how'd you manage that?
Exactly. A lot of new clothes that, I had to be very strategic.
Yeah.
I was on tour at 5.5 months with Roy, and we had like 30 dates, and he didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was your choice behind keeping it a secret?
It was actually, I was getting a lot of calls for the fall and Christmas and stuff like that. And it was because I didn't want the work to stop.
Yeah.
And it's stupid that you still have to think about that, but it was, that was the reason. And I have a friend that's since become pregnant, and she's told everyone that she's pregnant, and she's lost all her gigs. And so in hindsight, I know it was the right decision. And I was able to, because I had a healthy pregnancy as well. I toured, I had a show a week before I gave birth and before my due date. And so I was very fortunate because that worked. But that was the reason. And then it just kind of kept going and going and going. And I was like, well, now let's just wait till the end. And then I ended up writing a song for the birth and revealing it through social media. So
that's awesome. Yeah, no, because I seen it pop up. And I was kind of, you're flying through stuff, and I was like, I went back and go, what? No. And then honestly, to be truth, I went in and started looking through some pictures. There's no way.
I'm sure a lot of people do that.
And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. How'd you do that? And also been recently married. Mm-hmm. And that was a great story.
Yeah, that was the same place that we launched my CD in Plum Coulee. We actually, Eli proposed. It was pretty amazing. I was in my hometown and had a show, and all of a sudden I see him in the back of the hall in a white suit playing saxophone, playing Can't Help Falling in Love with You. He's walking down the aisle, and he gets on stage, gets down on one knee, takes the ring out of the saxophone bell and proposes. And it was a shock to me as well, to the whole audience. And that video went viral. It was on MSN, on Yahoo. It was everywhere. And so I thought, okay, now we have this proposal that everyone's been a part of. I was like, we can't not invite everyone to the wedding. So I decided to do the wedding in my hometown, in the town square, and have a public wedding. So anyone could come. We had about 1,500 people, about 50,000 watching on Facebook Live. And we had 28-person wedding party, and they were mostly musicians from around the world. And so they sang themselves up the aisle. And Eli played me down the aisle. He played Can't Help Falling in Love with You as well. And then we had a 9-foot by 4-foot wedding cake for the entire town. We had a traditional Mennonite thing, Rollkuchen with watermelon and for everyone. And it was a whole weekend wedding. We had a parade. We had a concert the day before with all my friends that flew in because I was like, we can't have all this talent here and not showcase it.
Yeah.
So it was a production weekend. I can't even tell you. It was amazing.
So when he showed up at the theater and started playing, what was the very first thought you thought of when you heard that?
Figured...
Did you know what was happening right away, or it just was like, what the...
Well, I was shocked, and it was and I was like, because I knew he had a gig that night.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to be, it was actually an hour and a half from me, but he was on a big tour with 5 Alarm Funk. And so I was not even planning on seeing him. He flew in secretly and all this kind of stuff. And he only could be there for 20 minutes because he had to go to a gig in Winnipeg. And so I knew it wasn't even possible for him to be there. So I was like, what is happening right now? I was very confused. And he gets on stage and he's like, I'm not supposed to be here tonight. He's like, but if you have a phone, you might want to film this. And I was like, oh, I know what's happening.
Yeah. That's great. So how many people, did he keep it a surprise from everybody, or
everyone
knew?
Oh, just my one singer, Grace, she knew. And so because that was his contact to know when to come in and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Yeah.
So we're probably on stage. It's like, I need someone on stage just to kind of hold things for a minute.
I know.
So what is he doing? Stay still. Yeah, it's really awesome. That's a great way of doing it. I mean, if you think of the perfect way for two musicians to
it was perfect.
Connect. Yeah.
It was perfect. And to be in my hometown, that so many people could share that was so cool. My mom was like, she was like, I thought I was getting Parkinson's. I was shaking so much. She had no idea. And he had asked my dad for permission, but my dad had no idea what was happening that day. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So you guys have been doing gigs together?
Yeah. He's like, I mean, Eli is like he's an extraordinary jazz saxophonist. He's played on the Grammys twice, played with Oscar Peterson at the Grammys, and he's amazing. But lately we've been trying to do some gigs together, which is nice, especially with the baby now, is that we can tour together. Yeah. So we just did a gig last week with the baby in Winnipeg for the 90th anniversary of Concordia Hospital. And we did a bunch of galas together this last week. And that's really nice. And, the baby just turned 7 weeks old and he's been at 8 concerts already.
Wow.
A couple red carpets. I'm like, this baby is...
destined.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Hopefully he's musical.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't become a drummer.
Totally.
So how did you meet Eli? How did that all come together?
So I was actually recording an album with Roy in 2011. And my producer, Daryl Bennett, I was recording in his house, and who comes downstairs but Eli Bennett, his son. And so we were recording. We ended up having him play sax on our album, and we became friends, went to the same church and stuff like that. And then years later, I had a friend here from New York, and I invited her out, and I thought, let's make it fun and invite a bunch of people. So I happened to call Eli. We'd never really hung out like that. And so we just hung out and we had a really good time. And I said to him, he's 10 years younger than me. And I said to him, I said, too bad you're not 10 years older. I'd totally date you. And then I remember we left that night and he says, how about this? If we're both not married in 5 years, let's get married. And that's where the joke started. And it ended up happening.
Awesome.
We became best friends and ended up getting married.
I had a girlfriend when I was 18 and 19. I remember us saying, if we're not married by the time we're 40, then we should get married. And she's a sweet lady, but I'm glad she got married ahead of time. and she's listening. I'm very sorry I said that. I didn't mean that in any disrespectful marriage, but you just got to realize, that probably wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah.
But
no, it was the best way for us both, because we just, after that, we became best friends for a long time, and it just slowly happened. Yeah,
it's neat when you can connect with someone that's in the same industry, especially when you're in music, and not have jealousy or...
That's because that, is very easily, because people are already jealous of the instrument, right?
Yeah.
And so when you can understand each other and build each other's careers up rather than diminish,
because you've probably seen relationships where two people are singers or something or whatever, and one person starts getting successful and the other person is not. Yeah. And it's like, it's horrible. Yeah. And it's tough to get through, but it's neat that you can perform together. Mm-hmm. And still have your separate things.
Absolutely. And he writes for TV and film, so that's a really nice part of what he does as well. Yeah. And actually, my new YouTube channel, he actually produced the last 3 songs that I have done. So that's a cool thing that we can work on together as well. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Sweet. Well, I know I've taken a lot of your time.
Oh, it's great.
But you have a great story.
Thank you.
Great violinist. Where would people best find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, everything on social media is at Rosemary Siemens, ROSEMARY-SIEMENS, and you can go to rosemarysiemens.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter.
All of it. Yeah, I suggest you follow. Always great, interesting clips all the time. And
thank you.
As I said, you do a really great job at that. And I think people should look and learn how to do it correctly.
Oh. Thank you.
But as I said, you have to be able to do that, right? Yeah. There's certain people just wouldn't be able to do. You have to put yourself out there, which is not always easy to do. Yeah. You got to be comfortable being able to do that. Yeah. But it really helps. I mean, it's pretty amazing that you think 15 years ago you can't do any of that.
No, none of that. And now, like, my mom comes here and we do a live stream of hymns with my mom, like all these things that you could have never done. And it's so cool that people can come. Like, I love that, because if you want to, like, I love doing the random acts of kindness for people, so I can do that, but I don't just share it with them anymore. You can share it with everyone. Yeah. And hopefully inspire a lot more people.
And podcast wise, I've been just kind of podcasting with people I know. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, Aaron Puchette was the first time I podcasted someone I didn't know. But coming here today, seeing you on social media, I felt like I kind of knew you already, totally, right? There was, and that's, I think people, when they see that and come to see you live, that's a nice connection. Absolutely. Because you don't have to gain that trust or that they've got a connection with you already. And I think for the show wise, it really means more. And people seeing it for the first time, it's great for them to go and check it all out and become a part, because they feel like the show continues, right?
Absolutely. That's a good point. Yeah. And it's so nice also that you can be in touch with fans after. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, because there's some really great people out there. I mean, they really, some crazy ones, but there's also some really great people that and travel to see you, and I'm sure you get all that. So
it was. I'll leave you with one cool story. I was in Hannibal, Missouri, this winter, and this woman came up to me crying after the show, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she says, "I got to tell you something." I says, "What?" She says, "My sister heard your song, Have a Little Faith," and she said her husband had just committed suicide. She was addicted to opioids. And she sent me this message that this song saved her life. And she says, and I came to your show today to tell you that. And you never know the power of music. And when you're writing a song, how it will affect people, where it will go, and how it will touch people. And I think that's when you get moments like that, that's what it's all for.
Yeah, that's what you're made to do, And then you realize, I am doing the right thing. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Love having you on the podcast.
Thank
and make
you.
sure you check out all those social media stuff. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you play sometime.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Same.
I'd love to do that. All right. Awesome. End of day. And thank you very much.
Thank you.